the animals until you bring them out here.
No, remember when we had the film of our baby gorilla?
This is the baby gorilla.
This is baby gorilla Jim.
Back in the golden days of late-night television, a tiny baby gorilla stole the spotlight on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. With his curious eyes and almost human expressions, he melted hearts across America and left everyone wondering, who was this little creature? What made him so different from every other ape we'd seen? And why did his story suddenly vanish after that unforgettable night? This is the untold journey of Johnny Carson's mysterious baby gorilla, and the truth that time almost forgot. A Star is Born, on live television. The year was the height of Johnny Carson's reign on The Tonight Show, a time when American television was bursting with laughter, wit, and unforgettable surprises. On one particular evening, the stage lights dimmed, just enough for the audience to sense that something special was about to happen.
Because I was shy. Well, that sounds like a ambivalence, right?
No.
On
not at
stage, you see, when you're on stage in front of an audience.
The curtain drew back, and instead of a famous actor or musician, there appeared a small bundle of fur, a baby gorilla cradled gently in the arms of a zookeeper. His name was Oliver. The audience gasped first, then melted into warm laughter and applause as Johnny turned toward the little creature with that signature smirk that meant he was about to make magic happen. Oliver wasn't just any animal guest. There was something strikingly human about the way he held himself. His tiny fingers clenched tightly, as though he was unsure of this strange new world of lights and cameras. His dark eyes darted around the studio, curious, intelligent, and a little frightened, yet calm in a way that drew everyone in. Carson leaned closer, making one of his famous light-hearted comments, and the crowd roared. Laughter filled the studio, but it wasn't the usual kind of laughter that mocked or teased. It was pure affection, the kind reserved for something undeniably adorable. For a few moments, the show's usual rhythm slowed down. The audience wasn't watching for jokes anymore. They were witnessing an encounter that felt strangely profound, a meeting between man and creature that mirrored something deeply familiar. The zookeeper, speaking softly to Johnny and the crowd, explained that Oliver was still very young, one of several baby primates being raised at the zoo. "We've raised about 22, he said proudly. "And Oliver here is one of our latest babies." The crowd clapped again, and Johnny nodded with genuine admiration. The conversation flowed easily, blending humor with a kind of gentle wonder. Oliver's movements were mesmerizing. He gripped his blanket like a child clinging to a toy for comfort, blinking slowly as though processing every sound and face around him. Carson joked about Oliver's serious look, asking playfully, "Why does he look so sad all the time? Isn't Oliver happy?" The zookeeper laughed and reassured him, "Of course he is, but like most gorillas, he's thoughtful. You'll see more expressions when they grow older." At one point, Johnny reached out, and Oliver tilted his head as if studying him. The host's humor softened into fascination.
We got a lot of great people. We're going to repeat the great Jack Webb Dragnet sketch. We have the barroom brawl.
The studio lights reflected gently off Oliver's fur as cameras zoomed in close. Viewers at home could see every tiny detail, the delicate lines of his face, the way his small hands moved with intent, almost human-like precision. For a few moments, Oliver wasn't just a guest. He was the center of an emotional connection that television rarely captured. What made the moment extraordinary wasn't only Oliver's charm. It was how effortlessly he bridged the gap between species, how easily he turned curiosity into empathy. That night, something beyond entertainment took place on The Tonight Show. A baby gorilla, without a single word, managed to remind millions watching that humanity's gentlest side could be reflected in the eyes of another creature. The applause that followed wasn't just for Johnny Carson. It was for Oliver, the unexpected little star who had just won America's heart. But what if that innocent little stare held a deeper secret, something science couldn't quite explain? Stay tuned to uncover the truth. The mystery behind Oliver's unusual charm. As the night of his television debut faded into memory, Oliver's innocent face lingered in the minds of millions. Viewers couldn't stop talking about the baby gorilla who seemed almost human. There was something about the way he moved, the way he looked at people, curious, thoughtful, as if he understood more than he should have. While other animals that appeared on The Tonight Show came and went, Oliver stayed in conversation long after the credits rolled. At first, people were simply enchanted. Families who had seen the show gathered around breakfast tables the next morning, describing the tiny gorilla with the solemn eyes. Newspapers mentioned him briefly, calling him the adorable little primate that stole Johnny Carson's spotlight. But soon, admiration began to shift into fascination, and fascination into speculation. What was it that made this baby gorilla so different? Those who had watched closely noticed features that didn't quite fit the typical image of a gorilla. His face appeared flatter, his nose smaller, and his expressions more defined, eerily close to human. Some said his eyes seemed too knowing, too reflective, as though he was thinking, not just reacting. And when clips of his appearance were replayed, people began to whisper the same question. Was Oliver really a gorilla, or something more? In the early 2000s, before the internet or quick scientific clarifications, rumors spread like wildfire. The most sensational claim came from those who believed Oliver might not be entirely an ape. They called him the human Z, a supposed hybrid of human and chimpanzee. It sounded outrageous, but the theory captured imaginations. After all, how else could anyone explain his upright posture, his calm demeanor, and that almost human-like spark in his eyes? Animal behaviorists, curious yet skeptical, started studying photographs of Oliver. Some dismissed the claims immediately, but others weren't so sure. The zoo staff who had raised him described him as unusually cooperative, more attentive, and less aggressive than typical apes. He rarely threw tantrums, preferred human company, and even seemed to mimic certain gestures.
I don't know. Well, look, it's a yard. So this is not a big yard.
That's right.
It's not a big yard. It's comfortable. It's nice. I like that.
Qualities that only deepened the intrigue surrounding him. Meanwhile, television producers and talk show hosts sensed an opportunity. Oliver's mysterious aura drew viewers, and stories about him began appearing in magazines and documentaries. He became a topic of coffee table discussion, an odd blend of science, curiosity, and wonder. Everyone wanted to know, was this creature nature's accident or evidence of something the world had never seen before? Behind the growing fame, however, Oliver remained a gentle, quiet soul. While people debated his origins, he continued to grow, unaware of the theories surrounding him. To those who cared for him daily, he wasn't a scientific puzzle or an evolutionary anomaly. He was simply Oliver, affectionate and intelligent, with a gaze that seemed to carry both innocence and mystery. But as his story spread, curiosity began to take a darker turn. The fascination that once brought smiles would soon draw scientists, collectors, and even skeptics closer, all determined to uncover the truth behind the strange little primate who once captured America's heart on live television. And as his story spread, curiosity took a darker turn. Could this innocent creature be hiding a truth science wasn't ready for? Keep watching. The early life of Oliver. Before Oliver ever stepped under the bright lights of The Tonight Show, his life began far from the world of television and laughter. He was born and raised in a small private zoo, one that prided itself on nurturing young primates with patience and care. The handlers there had worked with dozens of apes, over 22 by some accounts, yet they all agreed that Oliver was unlike any they had ever seen. From his earliest days, he displayed a peculiar calmness, an alert awareness that set him apart. While most baby chimpanzees clung wildly to their mothers or caretakers, Oliver observed quietly, studying faces, following movement, and reacting with unusual stillness. His keepers often joked that he seemed to be thinking all the time. He was affectionate but reserved, playful yet gentle, almost as if he understood the boundaries of his surroundings. Unlike the noisy, restless behavior typical of young apes, Oliver preferred close human contact and often responded to words, tones, and even gestures in a way that seemed too knowing for a creature his age. The staff adored him. They called him the baby with the thoughtful eyes, and visiting families loved to watch him interact. Children giggled as he reached out from his enclosure, sometimes mirroring their movements or softly tugging at their sleeves. There was something profoundly endearing about the way he connected with people, not through wild energy, but through quiet understanding. To many, it felt as though a bridge existed between Oliver and the humans who cared for him. for a child. He was bottle-fed, dressed in small garments for warmth, and comforted when frightened. The handler spoke to him constantly, believing that their voices soothed him. Over time, Oliver developed habits that mirrored those around him, walking upright for short moments, responding to his name, and following human motion with uncanny precision. What began as curiosity slowly became fascination, and fascination turned into awe. The zookeepers were proud of their little star, but also protective, sensing that not all the attention would bring good.
Boris Karloff or Peter Lorre talking to Tallulah Bankhead or Bette Midler's first appearance, but unfortunately...
Yet, as demand for exotic animal features on television shows increased, Oliver was eventually chosen to appear on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. It was meant to be a simple, joyful moment, an opportunity to showcase a rare and intelligent animal, not to ignite a controversy. But the moment Oliver appeared on camera, everything changed. What had once been a quiet life among his caretakers suddenly became a public spectacle. The audience's laughter, Johnny's curiosity, and the flood of nationwide attention would open a door that could never again be closed. From that night forward, Oliver was no longer just a beloved zoo animal. He became the subject of intrigue, study, and myth. As the whispers about his origins grew louder, so did the fascination surrounding his nature. People wanted to know who or what Oliver truly was. The kind hands that once raised him could no longer protect him from the wave of attention that was about to sweep across the country, setting the stage for the storm of speculation and science that would define the next chapter of his life. So could this gentle, wide-eyed creature really be something beyond nature's design? A bridge between man and ape, or just myth? Stay tuned. The rise of the human Z myth. As Oliver's fame spread beyond the cheerful walls of Johnny Carson's studio, the innocent curiosity surrounding him began to evolve into something more complex. What had started as a heartwarming television moment was slowly becoming the subject of heated debates, wild rumors, and scientific intrigue. Across America, people were asking the same question: what exactly was Oliver? His appearance was the root of it all. Photographs and recordings circulated, and the more people looked at him, the more unusual he seemed. His face appeared flatter, his ears slightly higher, and his nose more defined, features that, to the public eye, seemed oddly human. Observers noticed that he often walked on two legs for short distances, an uncommon trait among chimpanzees. Some witnesses claimed his posture appeared too upright, too natural, as though he preferred walking like a person. Others pointed out that he rarely displayed the aggression typical of his species. He was calm, even polite, with an awareness in his eyes that unsettled as much as it amazed. Soon, newspapers began printing attention-grabbing headlines. "The Human Z," one article boldly proclaimed, a supposed cross between human and chimpanzee. The story spread like wildfire. Magazine covers featured side-by-side comparisons of Oliver's face and a man's, daring readers to spot the difference. Television shows replayed his moments on The Tonight Show, slow-motioning his every gesture as if searching for hidden proof. Scientists were divided. Some dismissed the rumors outright, saying that Oliver's distinct look could easily be the result of natural variation among chimpanzees. Others, however, hesitated. They couldn't explain why Oliver lacked the typical heavy brow and protruding muzzle of his kind. Even more puzzling, he seemed less hairy, with lighter skin and smaller teeth. It was enough to make researchers wonder if something truly unusual had occurred in nature's mysterious design. Behind the growing speculation, Oliver's life was changing rapidly. He was moved from place to place, his caretakers overwhelmed by the sudden attention and constant demands for testing and appearances. Each transfer distanced him further from the simple, nurturing environment he once knew. To the public, he had become an object of curiosity, a living question that needed to be answered. Yet to those who truly saw him, there was still the same gentle, introspective being who only wanted peace and companionship. The frenzy around Oliver revealed more about humanity than about him. People's fascination with the idea of a human-like animal exposed both their curiosity and their fear. The fear that the boundary between man and nature might not be as solid as they believed. For every scientist trying to study him respectfully, there were others eager to exploit the legend for fame and fortune. As the years passed, the excitement faded into controversy. The more attention Oliver received, the more his identity became a spectacle rather than a story. When scientific voices finally stepped in to separate myth from truth, the mystery surrounding Oliver would take yet another turn, one that would shift his life away from cameras and headlines towards something far more revealing than anyone had expected. So how did a tiny TV chimp turn from beloved curiosity to scientific controversy, and what truth waited beyond the myth? Stay glued. The science that shattered the myth. By late 2020, the whirlwind of speculation surrounding Oliver had grown into something of a legend. For years, he had been passed from owner to owner, from showbiz curiosity to research subject, and finally to quiet obscurity. Yet, the question that had once made him famous still lingered like an unsolved riddle. Was Oliver truly part human? Scientists, journalists, and the public were all eager to know the truth behind the mysterious human Z. It was time for answers, and modern science was ready to provide them. When researchers finally decided to put the long-standing rumor to rest, they turned to a tool that had not been available during Oliver's early years: DNA testing. Samples of Oliver's blood and hair were carefully collected and examined in laboratories equipped with advanced genetic sequencing technology. The process was precise, thorough, and entirely focused on determining what decades of speculation had failed to uncover.
Over the years, the staff has come up from time to time with some crazy things for me to do.
Weeks of analysis revealed what scientists had suspected all along, though the public was slow to accept it. Oliver was not a hybrid. He was a pure chimpanzee belonging to the species Pan troglodytes. The tests showed no trace of human DNA, no sign of cross-species blending, and no biological mystery hiding in his genes. What had seemed extraordinary to the naked eye was, in fact, the natural variation that can occur within the chimpanzee population. His distinctive features, the flatter face, lighter skin tone, and calm demeanor, were simply part of his individual uniqueness, not evidence of anything unnatural. For the scientific community, the results brought closure. For the public, however, they stirred something different, a quiet sense of sadness. The myth that had made Oliver a household name for decades had finally dissolved into reality. He was not a genetic miracle, nor a creature caught between two worlds. He was simply Oliver, a chimp who had been misunderstood, mislabeled, and overexposed by human curiosity. Yet, even with the truth revealed, Oliver's story carried deep meaning. The fascination surrounding him had exposed the human tendency to see reflections of ourselves in nature, to search for something familiar in the faces of other creatures. It also revealed how quickly wonder can become exploitation. For much of his life, Oliver had been treated less as a living being and more as a puzzle to solve, a spectacle for profit and entertainment.
Hey, look at McCormick back there.
After the tests, Oliver's journey entered a new phase. Freed from the myths that had once defined him, he was placed under the care of those who sought to give him peace and dignity. The scientists who examined him ensured he was moved somewhere safe, a place where he could live not as an experiment, but as the intelligent, gentle creature he had always been. With the legend of the human Z finally laid to rest, the focus turned to Oliver's well-being. The world that had once laughed and speculated about him had changed. Now, the goal was not to question his origins, but to give him the life he had been denied for so long, a life of quiet, safety, and freedom. What came next for Oliver was not the fame of television cameras, but the long-awaited calm of sanctuary, where his story could finally shift from myth to meaning. And how did a creature once trapped in fame's spotlight find peace in silence and change our understanding of humanity forever? A quiet life beyond the spotlight. After the truth about Oliver's DNA finally came to light, the world's fascination with him began to fade. The cameras stopped flashing, the headlines grew silent, and for the first time in decades, he was no longer the center of public attention. What remained was an aging chimpanzee who had spent most of his life being passed from one place to another, often misunderstood, and rarely given the peace he deserved.
Boris Karloff or Peter Lorre talking to Tallulah Bankhead, or Bette Midler's first appearance, but unfortunately...
Yet, even after everything, Oliver's gentle spirit endured. The years that followed were a turning point. No longer seen as an experiment or a spectacle, Oliver was entrusted to the care of those who truly valued his well-being. Eventually, he was transferred to Primarily Primates, a sanctuary in Texas known for rescuing and rehabilitating primates who had been exploited by entertainment industries, laboratories, or private owners. It was here that Oliver would finally find what he had been denied for so long: safety, companionship, and dignity. When he first arrived at the sanctuary, staff members were struck by his calmness. Despite the trauma and instability of his past, Oliver showed no signs of aggression. Instead, he carried himself with quiet grace, often sitting in the sunlight with his eyes half closed, as though savoring the silence. The caretakers provided him with a large, comfortable enclosure, complete with trees to climb, blankets to wrap himself in, and the company of other rescued chimps nearby. Over time, Oliver began to settle into a peaceful routine. His days were simple but fulfilling: morning meals of fresh fruit, long hours of rest, and occasional moments of curiosity as he watched his surroundings. The sanctuary staff described him as gentle, almost contemplative, a chimp who had seen much of humanity's extremes, from admiration to exploitation, and somehow survived it all without bitterness. He showed affection in small gestures, accepting food by hand, making soft vocalizations, or simply gazing quietly at his caregivers with a look that seemed to say, "Thank you."
I don't know. Well, look, it's a yard. So this is not a big yard.
That's right.
It's not a big yard. It's comfortable. It's nice. I like that.
The public rarely saw Oliver again, but those who worked closely with him understood the depth of his story. To them, he was more than a former celebrity chimp. He was a symbol of resilience, a reminder of how easily wonder can turn into misunderstanding, and how even the most exploited animals still possess the capacity for trust and peace. As the years passed, Oliver aged gracefully. His once dark hair began to gray, and his movements slowed. Yet he remained alert and aware. He had finally found what fame could never give him: the freedom to simply exist without judgment, to be neither mystery nor myth, but himself. The sanctuary staff made sure he was comfortable, cared for, and never alone. For the first time in his long and complicated life, Oliver was surrounded not by flashing cameras or curious crowds, but by quiet compassion. The story that had begun with laughter on national television had now become something softer and deeper, a story of survival, acceptance, and redemption. But time, even in the calmest of places, continues its steady march. As the years at Primarily Primates passed, the world would soon have to say goodbye to the chimp who had once blurred the line between curiosity and compassion, and whose final days would reflect the peace he had always deserved. What did the world truly lose when Oliver took his final breath? A mystery solved, or a mirror of our own humanity? Stay with us. The final days of a gentle soul. As the seasons passed quietly at Primarily Primates, Oliver grew older and slower, his once youthful energy replaced by a calm stillness that spoke of both wisdom and weariness. The years had etched their story across his face, a story of captivity, curiosity, and eventual peace. To those who cared for him, he was not just another rescued animal. He was living history, a reminder of how fragile the line between fascination and exploitation can be. By the time Oliver reached his 50s, a remarkable age for a chimpanzee, his body had begun to show signs of decline. His steps were heavier, his hands less steady, yet his spirit remained unbroken. Caretakers described how he still enjoyed simple pleasures: a patch of warm sunlight, the taste of ripe fruit, and the comfort of his soft blanket. Often, he would sit quietly near the edge of his enclosure, watching the world in silence, his deep eyes reflecting both serenity and something almost human, an understanding that words could never express. Despite his fragile health, the staff at the sanctuary made sure he lacked nothing. They provided warmth during cold nights, special meals to ease his aging digestion, and medical attention whenever he needed it. More importantly, they gave him respect. There were no crowds, no flashing lights, no tests, only gentle voices and steady hands. For the first time in his life, Oliver was surrounded not by curiosity, but by care.
Because I was shy. Well, that sounds like a ambivalence, right?
No.
On
not at
stage, you see, when you're on stage in front of an audience.
In 2023, after living more than 5 decades, Oliver's journey came to an end. He passed away peacefully in his sleep, leaving behind a silence that felt heavy with gratitude and memory. The caretakers mourned him deeply. To them, he was not a specimen or a spectacle, but a companion who had endured so much and still met the world with quiet grace. News of his passing reached those who remembered the baby gorilla from Johnny Carson's show all those years ago. It stirred nostalgia and reflection. Oliver's story had come full circle, from television fame to scientific mystery, from captivity to sanctuary, and finally, to peace. Though his life had been marked by misunderstanding, it ended in dignity. And even in death, he continued to inspire reflection on what it truly means to be humane. And what if Oliver's quiet eyes still hold a message we've yet to understand? Could his story reveal more about us than him? The legacy that outlived the legend. Oliver's passing in 2023 marked the end of a long and extraordinary journey, but it did not erase his story. If anything, it deepened it. The little chimp who had once made millions smiled on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, left behind something more enduring than fame, a legacy that continues to challenge the way people see animals, intelligence, and empathy. In the years following his death, Oliver's story began to resurface across documentaries, research discussions, and online archives. Viewers revisiting the old footage could not help but be moved by his expressive eyes and calm nature. To a new generation who had never seen Johnny Carson on television, Oliver became more than a curious animal guest. He became a symbol of humanity's complex relationship with the creatures it studies, entertains, and sometimes misunderstands. His story became a mirror, reflecting both our fascination with the unknown and our capacity for compassion when we finally learn to listen instead of exploit. Scientists often refer to Oliver's case as a lesson in humility, a reminder that science must walk hand in hand with empathy. The myth of the human Z may have been disproven, but it sparked valuable conversations about animal welfare and the ethical boundaries of human curiosity.
To have some of the members of the studio audience participate in a little something so when they went home they'd have a little...
Oliver's life encouraged many sanctuaries, researchers, and advocates to rethink how animals in captivity are treated, especially those used for entertainment or experimentation. His legacy lives quietly in these reforms, in the stronger protections, better living conditions, and growing respect for primates worldwide. For the sanctuary staff who knew him best, Oliver's greatest impact wasn't found in headlines or studies, but in the way he changed hearts. They spoke of how his gentle nature softened even the most skeptical visitors, how standing before him made people realize that intelligence and emotion are not traits unique to humans. His story became a silent plea for understanding, that every creature, no matter how small or strange, deserves kindness. Even now, decades after that famous television appearance, clips of Oliver continue to circulate, carrying his memory into new homes and hearts. He may have begun as a mystery, but he ended as a message, one that reminds us that true greatness is not in what makes us different, but in what connects us all. So what do you think? Was Oliver's story a tale of misunderstood science, or a reminder of how deeply connected we are to nature? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.